If you had asked me 2 months ago what I knew about my mother, I would have told you she was quiet, dependable, and a bit old-fashioned. The kind of woman who ironed her bedsheets and still sent handwritten thank you notes. The kind who never missed church on Sunday and always kept the cookie jar full, even after her arthritis made baking a painful task. But I would have never used words like mysterious or tragic. And yet, here I am, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor of her old bedroom, holding a diary I wasn't supposed to find. It all started the week after her funeral. I was back in my childhood home in Greenfield, Ohio, a small suburban town with wide porches and neighbors who still wave when they pass. The kind of place where everyone knows you by your first name, and silence sits heavy in the corners of every room. I hadn't lived here in over 20 years. After college, I moved to Boston, married, then divorced, and built a new life filled with meetings, traffic, and takeout dinners. But when Mom died, I was the only one left to handle the house. Dad passed 5 years ago, and my younger brother, Tyler, was stationed in Germany with the Air Force. That left me, Emily, the dutiful daughter, to pack up the memories. The house smelled like dust and lavender. I remember that smell from childhood, her favorite drawer sachets. They were still there, tucked in every dresser, like she never planned to leave. I had started in the kitchen, carefully boxing up the blue willow dishes she loved. But when I opened the cabinet above the stove and saw her recipe box, I just sat down and cried. Grief doesn't hit like in the movies. It sneaks up on you, quiet and sharp. One moment you're taping a cardboard box shut, and the next, you're on the floor, sobbing over a stained index card for her pecan pie. It was on the third day, after I had cleared the attic and donated most of her clothes, that I found the diary. It was hidden in the bottom drawer of her vanity, beneath a false panel I never knew existed. I only found it because the drawer stuck, and when I yanked it hard, the panel popped loose. The diary was wrapped in a faded scarf, one I remembered vaguely from when I was little. It smelled like her perfume, a mix of lilac and something soft I could never name. My fingers trembled as I unwrapped it. The leather cover was worn, the edges frayed. I opened it, expecting grocery lists or church notes, something mundane. But the first line stopped me cold. May 3rd, 1987. I should have told her the truth when she was old enough to understand. But now, I think it might be too late. I froze. That was the year I turned 7. At first I told myself it was just a private journal, a place for her thoughts, nothing more. But a part of me knew this wasn't just a diary. This was something else, something buried. I hesitated. Should I even read it? It felt like opening a locked door I wasn't supposed to know existed. But then I remembered her face in the hospital. The way she held my hand just a little too tight that last night. How her eyes filled with something unsaid right before she whispered, "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything." I thought she meant about the cancer, about the pain. Now, I wasn't so sure. I sat on her bed, the same floral quilt, the same creaky frame, and began to read. Emily looks so much like him sometimes it hurts. I wonder if she'll ever ask why there are no baby pictures before she was 3. I've rehearsed what I'll say, but I'm still a coward. The room suddenly felt too small. The quiet, too. Loud. No baby pictures before I was 3? That wasn't true. Or was it? I ran downstairs to the hallway, the photo wall. The one with school portraits, Halloween costumes, graduation caps. I scanned every frame. Kindergarten. First grade. Christmas. At Grandma's, but there were none from before that. No baby in a high chair. No hospital bracelet. No messy cake on my first birthday. I called Tyler that night. He didn't answer. It was 2 a.m. in Germany, so I didn't blame him. But I stared at my phone screen. for a long time, thumb hovering over the call again button. Instead, I poured a glass of wine from the bottle I brought and curled up on the couch with the diary. Outside, the street was dark and quiet, except for the occasional distant hum of a passing car. I flipped through more pages, skimming, searching. She has his eyes. Every time she smiles, I see the man I tried so hard to forget. They told me it was better this way, that no one needed to know, that she'd be better off. My chest tightened. Who was he? My father? No, that couldn't be. Dad was always there, even if he was more of a shadow than a presence. He was kind, in that distant sort of way, always working, always distracted. He was also white, very white. I wasn't. That thought had always sat quietly in the back of my mind. I had caramel-toned skin, deep brown eyes, and dark curls Mom always tried to straighten. She said I took after her grandmother from the South. Creole blood, she used to say, almost like a joke. But that line, she has his eyes. Something didn't sit right. I didn't sleep that night. I kept reading. Each page peeled back a layer I didn't know existed. My mother, my steady, kind, church-going mother, had lived with a secret about me. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the rest, but I had to, because whatever this was, it had been buried my whole life, and it was starting to crack open. I didn't get out of bed until late the next morning. The diary lay on the pillow beside me like a sleeping animal, quiet but alive, dangerous almost. The sun poured in through the half-closed blinds, and the light felt too honest, too revealing. Dragged myself to the kitchen and brewed coffee like a zombie. No music, no phone, just the slow drip of the pot and the occasional creak of the house settling. This was the same kitchen where Mom used to sing while flipping pancakes on Saturdays, where she'd gently scold me for trying to lick the frosting off cupcakes before they were cool. Now it just felt hollow. I finally called Tyler. He answered on the third ring, groggy and grumpy. Em? What time is it there? Early. Sorry, I said. But I found something. In Mom's room. There was a pause. Like what? A diary. Hidden and Ty. I took a breath. I think it's about us. Or at least, about me. Okay, he said slowly. What does that mean? I think Mom was hiding something big. About my childhood. About who my father is. Was. Another pause. Then, what are you talking about? Dad was your father. Was he? I whispered. Because nothing in this diary makes that feel true. He didn't respond. Ty, do you remember any baby pictures of me? From before I was 3? I mean, not really. But that's not weird, is it? Maybe they got lost. No, they didn't. She hid them. I heard him exhale. Okay, this sounds nuts. You're grieving. Maybe. Don't do that, I snapped. Don't make me feel crazy. Just listen. I could almost hear his military training kick in. That controlled calm. Okay, I'm listening. I read him a few lines from the diary. His silence grew heavier with each word. Finally, he muttered, Shit. Yeah, I whispered. You think Dad knew? I don't know. But if he did, and stayed anyway, then he was more of a man than I gave him credit for. I spent the rest of the day turning the house inside out. I searched drawers, photo albums, shoeboxes in the closet. I checked behind picture frames, under the floorboards in the attic. Nothing. Just that one diary, and the quiet hum of something missing. Then, around sunset, I found the envelope. It was hidden behind a row of dusty books on the shelf in the study. Plain, yellowing with age. My name was written in her script on the front. For Emily, when the time is right. My hands were ice cold. I took it to the kitchen, sat at the old table, and stared at it for 5 full minutes. Then I opened it. Inside was a single photograph and a letter. The photo was of a woman, younger mom, maybe in her mid-30s, holding a toddler. Me, but not in our house. Not in Ohio. The background was unfamiliar. Palm trees, maybe Florida. California? I flipped it over. On the back, written in faded ink. Los Angeles, July 1987. Emily's first real smile. Los Angeles? I had never set foot in California until a business trip 3 years ago. The letter was handwritten. No date. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. There are truths I couldn't say out loud. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew everything, you'd look at me differently, that you'd hate me, or worse, never forgive me. You were born in Los Angeles, not Ohio. You were almost 3 when we moved here. The man you called Dad, he raised you, loved you in his way. But he wasn't your biological father. Your real father's name was Marcus. He and I, we loved each other once. But our love wasn't built to last. He had demons I couldn't fight for him. He was kind, brilliant, complicated, and black. I knew my family would never accept it, and in my fear, I made choices I still regret. When I left him, I took you with me. I told myself I was protecting you. But in truth, I was running. From him. From the judgment. From my own shame. I buried that chapter so deep, I started to believe it never happened. But every time I looked at you, I remembered. You have a right to know where you come from, and if you want to find him, I won't stop you. All I ask is that you remember, I loved you every single day. Mommy tears fell silently onto the paper. So it was true. My whole life, my identity, had been wrapped in someone else's fear. And now, the one person who could answer my questions was gone. The next day, I found the old family desktop computer in the guest room closet. I booted it up, praying it still worked. It did, though it whirred like a machine from another century. There, buried in an old folder labeled Taxes, I found another file, Marcus.la doc. It was a scanned copy of a birth certificate, my birth certificate, the father's name. Marcus Emmanuel Carter, age 29, address, South Central Los Angeles. I leaned back in the chair, heart pounding. That name, that neighborhood, that life. It all felt like someone else's story. But it was mine. I searched for him online. It took hours. I tried old newspaper archives, public records, anything. Then finally, I found it. An obituary. Marcus Carter, 57. Jazz musician, community mentor, survived by no spouse or known children. My breath caught. He died 4 years ago. I stared at the screen, numb. All this time, he was out there, breathing the same air, walking the same earth, and now he was gone. No second chance, no reunion, no, I'm your daughter, just silence. But as I scrolled down the page, I found something that made my fingers stop. A memorial video, posted by a community center in LA, Carter House for Youth Arts. And there, in the video, surrounded by students and saxophones and laughter, was Marcus, alive, smiling, radiant, and next to him, a woman, maybe in her 20s, with skin like mine. The caption, Marcus and mentee Jasmine Carter. No relation, but he always said she was like a daughter to him. I stared. Not related, or maybe he just didn't know. I didn't know what exactly pushed me. Maybe it was the hunger to finally understand who I really was. Or maybe it was the ache of something unfinished. A door, half open, a chapter left unread. 2 days later, I boarded a plane to Los Angeles. The 6-hour flight felt like a lifetime. My heart thudded against my ribs the entire way, my head filled with a storm of questions. What would I even say to Jasmine? Hi, I'm Emily. I might be the daughter of the man you considered a father, but he didn't know I existed. I'm not here to ruin your day. It sounded crazy, but I went anyway. Carter House for Youth Arts was tucked into a worn-down, tight-knit neighborhood, a red brick building painted with bright murals of musical notes and children's faces. From inside, the sound of a saxophone drifted out, gentle and soulful, layered with laughter. I stood outside for a moment, staring at the plaque beside the door. In loving memory of Marcus Carter, musician, teacher, mentor, friend. I knocked, fingers trembling. A young woman opened the door, short curly hair, golden brown skin, expressive eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked. I hesitated. "Are you Jasmine?" Her brows pulled slightly together. "Yeah. Do I know you?" I shook my head. "No, my name's Emily. Emily Reed." The name meant nothing to her. Her face remained polite, but cautious. "I'm sorry," I rushed on. "This is going to sound really strange. I'm not here for money or anything weird. I think Marcus might have been my father." Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, slightly, but no words came. "Do you have a few minutes?" I asked quietly. "Please." She led me into a small office behind the main studio. The walls were cluttered with photos of kids playing instruments, award plaques, and old concert flyers. There was a worn leather couch and a chipped coffee table with an untouched cup of tea. She made a fresh one for both of us, then sat across from me, folding her hands in her lap. "Okay," she said slowly. "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her everything, about my mom's death, the hidden diary, the envelope marked with my name, the photo from LA, my birth certificate, the letter. The moment I said Marcus's name, her eyes changed. There was a softness, a hint of something heavy. "He never mentioned a daughter," she said quietly. "Not once." I nodded. "Maybe he didn't know." She let out a breath. "He once told me he lost something important. Something that was mine, but I don't get. To keep," he said. "I thought he meant a job or a love he let go." "Maybe he meant me," I whispered. She looked at me carefully for a long time. "He would have been proud of you." That night, I stayed at a budget motel near the freeway. I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, trying to imagine the sound of Marcus's voice. What would he have said to me if he'd known? Would he have hugged me? Would he have been angry at Mom? Or just quietly heartbroken? So many missed years. So many words never spoken. And now, nothing but silence. The next morning, Jasmine took me to his grave. It was a modest headstone, tucked under a shady tree in a quiet cemetery just outside the city. There were fresh flowers, lilies and sunflowers, and a tiny toy saxophone resting at the base. I knelt down, brushing away a few fallen leaves. My voice trembled. "Hi," I said softly. "I guess I'm your daughter." My throat closed. My chest ached in a way I'd never felt before. I don't know what I expected to find coming here. Closure? Answers? A piece of you I could keep? Tears rolled down my cheeks. "I wish you knew me. I wish I knew you." Jasmine placed a hand on my shoulder. Her voice was warm. "He would have loved you, you know. The way he loved music." Quiet. And deep. I nodded, unable to speak. Back at Carter House, she showed me more photos, videos, recordings of Marcus teaching kids to play, clapping his hands in rhythm, laughing. He had this glow to him, not flashy, but solid, like a tree. Then she opened a box. Inside were notebooks, his songwriting journals, scraps of lyrics, bits of poems, and one entry that caught my eye. It read, "I dreamed of a girl last night. She had my eyes but her mother's fire. She stood in sunlight and called me Daddy." I froze. He didn't write a name, but I knew. Somehow I just knew. Jasmine and I talked until dusk. She told me about how he'd built the center from nothing, how he used to spend his weekends fixing kids' instruments, how he bought shoes for a boy who came to class barefoot, how he'd sit in silence after jazz rehearsals staring at a photo of a young woman we couldn't identify. "I think it was your mom," Jasmine said. When I returned to Ohio a few days later, everything felt different. The house was still the same, creaky stairs, faded curtains, but I wasn't the same. I walked into the study and looked at Mom's photo. I still loved her. But I also resented her. She had loved me in her own way, fiercely, protectively. But fear had made her take something sacred from me, and now I was left to piece it back together. A week later, I stood in the backyard, the late afternoon sun, warming my skin, and made a choice. I opened my laptop, typed, "Jasmine Carter, co-founder, Carter House for Youth Arts." And then, "Hi," I was thinking, maybe I could come back, help with the music program, even just once a month. She replied, "An hour later, we'd love that. Family is always welcome." 6 weeks later, I was back in Los Angeles. I'd packed light. Just a suitcase, a worn leather journal I started writing in, and my mother's diary. I wasn't moving, not yet. But I needed to see if this new piece of my life fit into the person I was becoming. Jasmine greeted me at the airport like an old friend. She had this way of smiling that made people feel like they belonged, even if they'd never quite known where they came from. "You ready?" she asked, looping her arm through mine. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. And it was true. I was ready for something new. Not to replace what I'd lost, but to begin again with the pieces I'd found. Carter House was buzzing with energy that afternoon. A small recital was coming up, and the kids were practicing in every corner. The walls echoed with the sound of piano chords, drum beats, and the soft strain of a trumpet warming up. Jasmine led me into a classroom with chipped chairs and a whiteboard full of music theory scribbles. "You'll be helping with the songwriting workshop," she said. "They need someone who can help them tell their stories." I nodded. I didn't know if I could teach music, not like Marcus did, but stories that I understood, especially the ones that were messy, tangled, and full of heartache. Especially the ones about missing fathers. That first day, I sat in a circle with 6 kids, all between 10 and 13. One of them, a boy named Leo, kept his hood up and didn't say a word for the first 20 minutes. So I told them a story. I didn't use names, and I didn't talk about diaries or death. I just said, sometimes you find out something that changes how you see your whole life, and it hurts. But it also helps you grow into who you're supposed to be. Leo looked up, and he started writing. In the evenings, Jasmine and I would sit on the back steps of the center sipping iced tea and talking about Marcus. She told me about how he hummed when he washed dishes, about the time he taught a kid to play Somewhere Over the Rainbow for his grandmother's birthday, about how he'd sit on the roof and watch the stars when he couldn't sleep. "He always seemed like he was searching for something," she said one night. "I used to think it was peace. But maybe it was you." I blinked back tears. "And he never found me." "No," she said gently. "But you found him. In your own way." One afternoon, I opened Mom's diary again. It still smelled, faintly, of rose lotion and old paper. There was a passage I hadn't noticed before. Probably missed it the first time in my haze of grief. "If she ever finds this, I hope she doesn't hate me." I did what I thought was right. But if I could go back, I'd tell Marcus. I'd let Emily choose for herself. And maybe I'd choose differently too. I closed the diary and held it to my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel anger, just a soft, aching love. The kind that comes when you finally understand someone, not as a parent or a hero, but as a human being who made mistakes and tried their best anyway. By the third month, the workshop had turned into something beautiful. The kids wrote about heartbreak, about joy, about their fears. Leo, the boy with the hoodie, wrote a song about growing up in foster care and how music was the only thing that made him feel real. He played it at the recital. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. And when he finished, he looked at me. Just a glance. But it said everything. I nodded. He smiled. I still live in Ohio. My job's there, and so is the old house. But once a month, I fly back to LA. I stay with Jasmine. We cook. We play old jazz records. Sometimes we visit Marcus's grave together, and when I leave, she always hugs me tight and says, "See you soon, sis." Funny how life works. I spent years feeling like something was missing. Now I have more family than I ever imagined. Not the kind I was born into. The kind I found, in old pages, quiet music, and the cracks of a broken past finally healing. The last time I visited, Jasmine gave me a box. Inside was a framed photo of Marcus holding a baby. Not me, of course, but another child from the center. Still, it felt right. And beside it was a note, written in his handwriting. To the one I never knew. I hope you find your way back to music, to love, to yourself. I whispered into the air. I did. I found my way. And I found you, the end.